So I think we will make a start now. Welcome everyone, buena tarde, buenas tardes, and thank you for joining our session this afternoon. It's an absolute pleasure to be hosting this panel this afternoon about the role that universities have as agents for change, for local impact. We have a fantastic set of panelists this afternoon. So what we'll do is that I'll introduce a little bit our university, the university that is hosting this session, which is RMIT University. And then I'll give a little bit of context for the session before I invite our panelists to join me on the stage to have a bit of a discussion among ourselves, and then also with the public and those of you that are joining us online as well. So it's been fantastic to collaborate with UNESCO for this conference. We've been engaging from RMIT University in a number of ways, very keen on this particular topic about how we can drive impact and how we can learn from other universities that are participating in the session on this. So to give you a bit of an intro on RMIT, and I can't make the clicker work, but do you know where I have to point? No? I'll just march on. So RMIT is the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. It's one of the largest universities in Australia. We are an applied university of design, technology, and enterprise, and very proud to be on the top 1% universities in terms of impact on the Sustainable Development Goals. And we are a very international university as well. About 30% of our students are international. Of those, many of them are coming from Asia. About 60% of them are Chinese. And we also have presence in Vietnam. We have another 10,000 students in Vietnam. One of the largest investors there, and also in Singapore we have another similar number of students, as well as hundreds of articulation agreements in China, India, and broadly in Asia Pacific. And we have, we're so international that the university decided to set a foot in Europe, in Barcelona. Next year it'll be our 10-year anniversary being in Barcelona, and seeing the panel we've been able to convene, and seeing the connections that we've managed to develop. I have to say, organizations like Barcelona Global are partly guilty of how embedded we are with the ecosystem, and the city of Barcelona, Barcelona Activa, very, very supportive of us coming here to engage with the local ecosystem. And what we do in Barcelona is primarily look for opportunities to cooperate in research and education with other academic institutions, with industry, with local actors, and then also find ways to give our students an international experience. And we've been doing that for a few years, and now we are on to our next horizon, trying to bring more educational activity into the city, to cooperate with universities in joint programs, and potentially as well to do more entrepreneurial activity with the local ecosystem. So yes, it works, but now I'm going to skip some of these, which I already mentioned. So as you can see, we think about impact as a university, as impact in our main constituents, which are our students. We want to get them ready for life and work. That's one of the areas, and we do get measured as an institution for how easy it is for our students to find jobs after they leave university. So employability rankings are important for us. We also look at impact in industry with our research, and we'll get to explore these through the panel, and then the impact that we can create locally and in region through our international activity. So hopefully that gave you a snapshot of RMIT. And then I'll just highlight, as I mentioned, we've been looking very carefully into how we drive impact into sustainable, how do we contribute to the journey of the Sustainable Development Goals, and how do we do that, not only through making sure that our installation are low carbon, we have energy efficiency measures around our campus and so on, the kind of investments that we do, but also obviously, how do we embed SDGs into our learning programs, into our research, And we are an exemplar for that when it comes to relationships with our partners and the activities that we have in developing countries around us. So that's, I mentioned this already, and the impact that we do and how we've measured that with the Times Higher SDG rankings that I think kicked off 2 or 3 years ago. So focusing on today and this afternoon, because I want obviously our speakers to take center stage of the discussion today, the focus is how can universities generate impact through knowledge, through innovation, through the talent they develop, as well as establish partnerships that can really help us address the main challenges of our world today. And how can we be those agents for change? And to explore this topic, we have a fantastic set of panelists joining me. And if you could join the stage as I introduce you. First, we have Mateo Hernandez. He's the director of Barcelona Global. And Barcelona Global is a non-for-profit independent association that has more than 1,000 members. And it has the mission to make Barcelona one of the best cities in the world for talent and economic activity. I guess testament of that is that we're all here in Barcelona having this conversation. He's an international expert on local development, and he's been advisor to several cities like New York, Oslo, Torino, or London. He's been secretary of the International Advisory Board of the Smart City World Expo, and he's also been CEO of Barcelona Activa. Welcome, Mateo. Then we also have Jeb Terradas. He's a mentor, he's advisor, he's vice president of technology at Loop and former head of R&D and general manager at HP. And Jeb has held global executive positions at Hewlett-Packard, such as R&D director, and he's had responsibility for business management and strategy, innovation, and the development of new technologies. And now he advises startups and collaborates with Loop New Business Models as VP of Technology. Welcome, Jeb. Next we have Margaret Ludwig. She's come from RMIT Activator. She's head of Global Impact and Applied Innovation and Co-Venturing. Margaret is with RMIT Activator, who's the entrepreneurial catalyst of RMIT University. And she has a background as innovation practitioner and educator, and she draws on a lot of international experience from corporate, from academia, industry, and entrepreneurial sector. And Margaret is passionate about education and innovation and entrepreneurship, and the role that it has in sustainable economies, equitable societies, and connected communities. And last but not least, we have Oriol Stella. He's general coordinator of Barcelona Metropolitan Strategic Plan Association. He's an economist and a geographer, and he's a practitioner of local economic development, first as an independent consultant for local administration, and then for the Barcelona Provincial Council, where he's head of economic development strategies. And then since 2016, he's the general coordinator of the Metropolitan Strategic Plan of Barcelona. And he also coordinates the Chair Barcelona University Pompeu Fabra on local economic policies since 2017. So thank you very much for joining this afternoon, and I'll be here with you in the middle, thank you. And I guess we'll start by throwing a question to all of you that would be great to get in turns. And I would like to hear from you, what do you think universities need to do to enhance the impact they have in society, locally and globally? So maybe if we start with you.
Well, universities already have that impact. But let me first thank you, Marta, for inviting us, also for those 10 years in Barcelona. And let me send you an invitation to RMIT, and you can also be invited to consider opening a campus in Europe and opening this campus in Barcelona. This would be really an impact. This will be an impact because universities have a role and you know it better. First role is to train professionals, train people, educate, do research, transfer technology, and also build cities. And we all know it better than us, the role that universities have had in Barcelona to improve the city, the role of Pompeu Fabra in the 22 district, the role of Universitat de Barcelona in El Raval, in the privated areas, so they have a role. But there's a fifth role, new role on the 21st century, which is providing talent and creating talent and giving this talent that they will be able to attract and train to the places where they are. And that's what we are, that's why this invitation is sent to RMIT, because we know, and in Barcelona Global we are aware that there's a global movement of people moving from one country to another to be trained in the universities. And former champions were the United States, the UK, still there, but then Australia, you know better than anyone how to do it, Singapore as well, and Europe was a little step behind those countries. And now I think that at least in Barcelona Global, we feel that there's an opportunity and we want to fulfill it. So that's why a campus from RMIT in Europe in Barcelona is a good idea. And I'm sure that there will be many international students from emerging countries, from other places, willing to send their kids to study in Europe, safe place, good quality of life, good ways to develop, and you know you have the methodology. So that's a big impact on what universities do, but especially RMIT can do.
Thank you. I'll be sure to give the message to my Vice Chancellor. I would be delighted. No, thank you very much. Jeb, can I invite you next?
Yes, thank you, Marta, first for the invitation, for organizing these sessions, and I subscribe completely what Mateo said. I mean, this is it's the way to impact, and you can do it, no? But what I wanted is to just you guys, all the institutions, all the universities, all the education sector, to continue to look at what the society needs, right? Because at the end, you educate people to work in a society that has some needs. And in the last few years, there have been lots of new trends and changes, sustainability, automation, democratization of technology. That is what let me introduce this concept of the cyber, physical, and human age. No? 100 years ago, we were on the starting with steam engine, was more the hardware, was more the electronics, at least from science and engineering standpoint. Later in the 20th century, it came all the information age. But now what we really need, because of the demand, the social, economical, sustainable demand, is to integrate both things. No? And this is an area where the universities can help a lot by having this multidisciplinary curriculum that a fellow of my former company used to call the T-shape. You are very deep in the formal content, if it's science or engineering or math or whatever is the discipline, but we are also very broad to provide these cyber-physical solutions that are required. And this is one area where there is clearly an opportunity. I think the second aspect is with the skills beyond getting a degree. There is a set of skills that the university can start helping a lot that we have been missing in the past, which is this creative mindset, no? This questioning what the things are. Diversity. Diversity is, we had like 60 nationalities here, but 85% of the people were local. I mean, the diversity, more than a gender standpoint, in general, brings new ways of doing things, different attitudes. So this is, for me, one of the key things. And the last point I would make is for the universities to get out, to connect with the industry, to figure out how to collaborate. I know this is not easy, but if you stay in your premises, this is very difficult to happen. It's like any company working and finding the customers, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for that perspective. So I go next to you, Margaret, in terms of enhancing impact of universities in society.
Okay, thank you, Marta. And again, thanks. It's a fantastic opportunity to be here, and absolutely, I'll be there if we have a campus. I'll happily cut the opening ribbon for RMIT Activator in Europe. Brilliant. Yeah. So how do we enhance the impact? Well, I think where I go to, I go back to the beginning, and there's a lot of discussion of knowledge and innovation and entrepreneurship, absolutely fundamental to build those skills. And that's the what of what the university does, and also the how, whether it should it be digital, should it be remote, should it be in person? And these are all really important questions, but I step back to the why and the who. You know, why is a university in a local community? And that's different for every community, and sometimes we forget that. We think of education and impact in a very in a very homogeneous way, without actually stopping to think, well, is that the same for an Indigenous business in regional Australia as it is for a student, an MBA student in an elite university and into that community? So, you know, why does the university exist? Impact, but that's also about being a source of hope and a source of opportunity. It's about democratizing access to opportunity, and knowledge, innovation, talent, and entrepreneurships are vehicles that allow us to do that. Okay, but that then drives the university to think differently and move away from this legacy model of we're here to create and curate knowledge, to actually know we're here to solve problems. And to solve today's problems, we can no longer think in silos and act in silos within the university or indeed within the community. We have to work horizontally, and that speaks to how we think about partnerships internally, how we think about collaboration, but through cooperation and co-creation. So it's about being human-centered. And remember, the people, who gives us a license to operate, who gives us legitimacy to be in a community, to say to the community, we're here to change you. We have to ask their permission. This is something I've learned from working with Indigenous communities. We need to go into these communities humbly and ask their permission to change, to be agents of change there. And we forget to do that often because we become ivory towers. We're speaking from a perspective of privilege and also to the converted very often. So we need to think about when we go into Southeast Asian communities, what changes do they want? And not go in there telling them that we know what they need. And to me, that's human-centered. That's the basis of human-centered design, and we need to adopt those principles in education, so being a human-centered university. So I think when we do that, and when we get that right, the what and the how will follow.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And that's a reminder a bit of the motto of the conference of living now and behind, and when we go out from our base into other regions. But now to Oriol, it's more about when we come in here, no, and the impact in the city. So what's your view on that?
Yeah, so first of all, of course, thank you very much for inviting me and for inviting me to make possible for me to participate in this outstanding conference, because I didn't know about the size and the importance of this event. Yeah, I think that almost everything has been said, especially if you have been already invited to settle in Barcelona. But we also have a motto in the Barcelona strategic plan that is, it's all about relationships and connections. And then to enhance the role of the universities is about enhancing their relationships and connections with the society they are settled in. So in this case, in Barcelona, in the Metropolitan region, we have urban campuses, and we have campuses in the outskirts of the city, and then the relationships are different for these campuses. We must understand in every place what is the role and the connections that they can foster. But in general, for me, there are three main things. The first one is the connection with the global knowledge. So I think that universities in this case are the ones that are the example of the think global and act local, and they must do this, but the two ways, because they also have to think local about the local knowledge and local experiences and what happens where they are established, and then to project it globally. So both, so this is gateways for international knowledge and talent in these two ways, and then fostering openness in the society. As you said, diversity, etc. I think that they are very important agents in this way. And the second one is social purpose, of course, and to be engaged with to face the major human and planetary challenges from the local side, but always connected with the global sphere. And the idea, this is something that I learned in this conference yesterday, about the difference, or to think about community more than individuals. So in university, every student is worried about his own career and to have their degrees, etc. But university must transform this in community power, and how to make better communities from these individual efforts, let's say. And last but not least, the commitment to action. So the motto of Barcelona Global is let's make things happen. So universities have to make knowledge happen in reality, and that means, of course, technology transfer, innovation, research and development. We all know about this, but also it's very important, especially here, because we have weak connections between universities and industry. We already know this, and we acknowledge this, and we are working on how to overcome this constraint. But also for policies, public policies, we need evidence-based policies, and this is a connection that is still to happen in an important way here in Barcelona.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great call out, because we think about impact in industry, and we sometimes forget its impact in policy as well, and that's a big item in the agenda of the European Commission as well, on evidence-based policing. Great, thank you very much, Ariel. So if we stay local, and thinking about Barcelona, and thank you for your open invitation, very much in line with the mission of Barcelona Global, because you've done a lot of work into how to attract international talent into Barcelona, and then how you've been working also at breaking the barriers that talent encounters, whether we're talking about international businesses or students that want to come and study here. So, what's your message around that, and how can we make sure that, as Barcelona has been doing, cities in general, because we have people here from all over the world, and people online as well, what are your key messages of how you can bring through the university life into the city and generate local impact through higher education?
So when in Barcelona Global, we're a fully private organization with more than 1,000 members. RMIT is one of them. Also big companies, small companies, individuals. And people is committed with something that's an opportunity for Barcelona. And the opportunity for Barcelona is becoming a city of talent, of talented people. Because we do believe that talent attracts capital, much more in a sustainable way than capital attracts talent. So we have to focus the 21st century in Barcelona as the century for talented people. And then when you look to talent, there's a big engine of creating talent, which is universities. And yes, Barcelona does have great universities. And Spain has done a great effort on putting universities at the center of the strategy of re-skilling people, of skilling people. And now universities with different barriers are a great issue in Spain. But then we identified about 2 years ago that those universities, at least in Barcelona, are not really internationalized, not really. And then we looked carefully to data, and we identified that less than 4% of students in our undergraduate studies in our universities are coming from abroad, less than 4%. That in Melbourne would make you laugh. Is that university? No, this is a local school. And then we said that, well, there's a big opportunity there. Big opportunity not only for those universities to grow, but for the city to grow, for the city to attract new talented people, for the city to train new talented people, for the city to create a new economic sector in the city. We do have HP. It's a huge company up in here in Barcelona. But are universities an economic engine? Yes, they are. So in order for us to take advantage of this opportunity, we have to open our universities to international students. And then comes reality. And what does reality says? It's very difficult. It's very difficult because in Spain, someone decided that degrees should be a 4-year degree, not 3, like in all over the rest of Europe, not 3. So there's a big barrier. We have to change that. And we've been working with the minister to change that. And now there's the opportunity for those willing to have a degree on 3 years. If they are linked to Europe, they will have the chance to have 3 years degree. That's important. And that's important for Barcelona. But then comes validation. So for European Union, it's quite easy. But for those coming from abroad, sometimes it's highly complicated. Visas. If you're coming from abroad, it would be difficult to get your visa to study in Spain. So we have to change that. So everything that you've done in Australia has to be learned and applied in Spain. And we are working on that. Because there's a huge opportunity on that. And this opportunity is also an opportunity to really make Barcelona a global city. And to increase our opportunities in terms of economic activity, of attracting good professors from abroad, of attracting companies because they will know that there's a good base of students being trained in Barcelona, attracting families. So that's a key policy for the future in Barcelona, according to us. And what do we have to do? First, lobby the minister and the Catalan government in order to improve our regulation, downsize our procedures, which are a nightmare. Also, we have to create a culture in our universities, which is not there, that internationalization on undergraduate is very important, not only on masters, which they are, but undergraduate is very important. So we have to create that culture. And third, we have to really fulfill that invitation to attract global campuses to Barcelona. Because now education is a global business, let's say it this way. And we know that there are 5 million people changing its country every year to study abroad, but not to study in a single year, to study a full degree abroad, 5 million. And it's estimated that they will grow up to 10 million in the 2030. And we know that about between 15 and 10% of their annual income on emerging countries' families is devoted to higher education. So, and unfortunately, and that's a UNESCO challenge, I guess, some of those countries don't have good universities. So these families will have to send their kids abroad. And when sending them abroad, we want us to be in that list of countries where they want to study. And Barcelona has a great brand to have that. So let's be part of this competition for talented students and universities. And last why? Well, I think that around 1/3 of US unicorns were created by students coming from abroad. Around 1/3, or even bigger. And that's what has to happen. And this is the role of having international universities. And in Spain, we still are a little behind, while Australia, Singapore, UK, United States, but then now the Netherlands, Denmark is really growing on that area. And Spain, that has the perfect location, the perfect place, the mixture of cultures, the openness is lacking behind. So there's a great job to do, and in Barcelona Global, we are committed to make it happen.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And you've been talking about talent attracting capital, and talent is also critical for corporates. Yes. And so I wanted to ask you from that perspective of the industry, now that you've spent time at big corporates, now working in a more entrepreneurial environment, what's your view on the impact of that relationship between university and industry?
Okay. Before answering your question, I want to thank you, Mateo, because this is the right initiative. This is answering what I was saying before about the diversity in a very general term. No? You bring people with different culture, you bring people with different ways of thinking. So that's facilitating this is a fundamental aspect, no, for any company established here or any other country in the world. And I think you are doing the same thing. No? In terms of the relationship of companies with the university, I think I have three thoughts. No? One is there is a great opportunity. Any company of small, medium, even large size is realizing that 99.9% of the knowledge is outside their walls. So this is a great opportunity. It needs to be capitalized. No? It's one of those things that when you think about, you need to figure out, and if you link this with what I said before, with the adoption of all these trends, this rapid change, you don't have some knowledge that is really necessary. So you need to find it. So there's a great opportunity for making this collaboration work. Now, you need to, this is the same thing I'm telling to some startups. You need to connect with these companies. There is already some people dedicated to that. I was doing this in the HP Technology Venture, but we need to know that you exist. No? So there is a marketing job to be done as well, no? If you want to call it this way, more from a business perspective. The other one is, and this is very common, and it's normal. Scientists, researchers explain you the technology, and you need to go one step further. And in some cases, some people make this step on this technology solve this problem, as Margaret was saying. This is the problem, that important problem. People is willing to invest on that problem, and is a high priority as well. Then you will be successful. And the third point I will make is, when you talk about technology transfer, for example, usually you go to a certain company. And I challenge everyone to be, it's not my example, unfortunately, but to be very brave and create a spin-off. Go out, there are plenty ecosystems around here in Barcelona and Spain, all over the world, of accelerators, the universities. I think you are doing this, right? You help them match scientists with people from business. You help them and facilitate how to convert good technology or a great idea into a great product or a great solution of something that is needed. No? So I think these three aspects are fundamental. No? The opportunity that exists, that the technology needs to solve a problem. And in this aspect, I always was telling the people working with me of something I learned at the very beginning of my professional career, which is the unspoken user needs. Is those things that particular technology might solve that you have never thought. But if you don't go out, if you don't observe in some cases, it's a real application of design thinking, observing what happened. And I have a few examples that I could share later with you guys. So these three things for me are fundamental.
That's great, thank you very much. And maybe, I take from that maybe sometimes one needs to think about impact at the onset as opposed to developing the technology and then seeing how you bring it to industry, but keeping it that front of mind.
From the very beginning.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we were referring to how the university does it, and you might think that the RMIT Activator is dedicated to supporting our own academics to make that transfer, but actually the RMIT Activator does a lot outside the university and relating to the local ecosystem. So, Margaret, it would be great to hear from you, what do we mean, or what does impact mean to you and what you do in the Activator?
Yeah, so thank you. And just building on what's been said before, I mean, at Activator, I think, how we do impact and the what we do is very broad. So the first thing is that if you really want to make impact, you have to go well outside the walls of the university. And there's work to be done internally, absolutely. But we have to be porous. We have to be relatable and accessible to those communities for whom we're a bit of for whom we're very distant. So, for example, when I ran a very small business in Ireland, I tried to get involved in the university in innovation. I was involved in manufacturing, woodworking and manufacturing. Nobody would work with me, right? Because I didn't have enough money. I also didn't have scientific understanding within my small company. And there are many, many other, and you mentioned small and medium enterprises, even the thought of interacting with the university is difficult for them to begin to imagine. How do we make that easy? How do we help them build a capacity to absorb the science coming out, to absorb the innovations? How do we share a language? How do we share timelines? And an example of this is we worked with the city of Melbourne during COVID. And our mandate was to help small and medium enterprises in the city recover and rebuild. That was hugely, hugely difficult. We thought, yeah, easy, we'll teach them all these great things we know about innovation and entrepreneurship. Well, guess what? They didn't want to learn it the way we wanted it. They had different needs in that moment. They were talking about survival. We were very used to dealing with startups coming to us who are already convinced that they wanted to be a startup. Okay, so it's not in those moments where people come to us and say, hey, we know we need you, that we should be looking for how we create impact. It's in the silent 95% of the businesses and the students and the academics internally and our professional staff who don't think it's relevant to them and who have a very different view and experience of working with a university. Another example would be, so yes, we deliver as Activator, we deliver pretty standard innovation and entrepreneurial modules into students, into their curriculum. And they carry credit or they don't carry credit. We're all very used to that. But we go beyond that. So, for example, we work with Aboriginal and Indigenous businesses. Not necessarily what we would normally do in a pre-accelerator, but we're helping them to think about international global growth and exporting. Okay. For that particular cohort, again, the first thing we had to do was explain to them why a university could help them. Because the barriers to the perception of what a university looks like, that it is top-down, that it is elite, that it does not understand them, that it doesn't understand their grassroots and community challenges. We have to, first of all, break that down before we can even begin to do anything to make an impact. That's another thing. We're working with a large Spanish clean energy company who are building wind farms in regional Australia. And we're working with them to redefine how they do corporate social responsibility in that regional setting. Now that takes us into very small communities, and we're talking, here today we hear lots of talk about hybrid and digital technologies. Well, guess what? Those children aren't gaming because they don't have good internet access, right? And our role there is not to turn all of those children into, unicorn founders. Our role there is to really think about how can we improve economic participation and how can we raise the innovation quotient of a regional farming community. Okay, so when we think about impact as a university, there's so much that exists well outside the bounds of technology transfer between large corporates and academic researchers. And that takes time, it takes energy, you fight battles internally and externally, but the starting point is going and meeting people where they're at, and that's not top down. So that's, I guess, my thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, Margaret, and great to know about the work that you're doing with all these different communities. And coming back to the local community here as well, I know Oriol and his team have been doing a mammoth work and a lot of consultation to put together the new strategy for the metropolitan area of Barcelona. So tell us a little bit of a preview of what role do universities, both local and international, have in that new strategy?
Yeah, we've been working in this 2-year process called Barcelona Demà, Barcelona Tomorrow. That is we've been preparing the new strategic plan that will be presented in October, so in early October. And we are working now in projects and engaging the stakeholders, because the new strategic plan, the name is Metropolitan Commitment 2030, so we want this commitment. So we are in the process of changing the Metropolitan Strategic Plan of Barcelona. The association was set in 1988, and it has had a long trajectory and well, different stages. Now we are in the stage of transforming from a think tank to a think and do tank, and we want to transform ourselves in an incubator and well, a place with facilitators for agreements, etc., just to make possible have policies at metropolitan regional level. This means more than 150 municipalities, 5.3 million inhabitants, and a lot of stakeholders. And we have, in this 2-year process, we have been working on identifying what of our major challenges must be faced, especially in this territorial scale in the metropolitan region. Now we have been using the mission-oriented innovation approach, Mariana Matrucatos, blah, blah, but comes from the universities, so this is a knowledge transfer to our organization. And we have right now 8 missions, that are a lot of them, but our commitment is not only with the goals and the key goals that we have set, but in building this agency at metropolitan regional level, because we think that is the good one to face these challenges. So in this process, and for this metropolitan commitment, what we expect from the universities, so 6 key roles or 6 key actions. The first one is to provide data and knowledge at metropolitan scale, because we don't have well, as many data or information or knowledge or studies at this scale as for the city or for even the metropolitan area. That is different. It's smaller than the metropolitan region. We don't know. We have not analyzed the footprint or the metabolism of this metropolitan region, and we think that this is important, and having data, and of course, that universities collaborate with private companies that can provide big data for doing these researches. So this is the first one. The second one is, of course, nurturing and attracting talent, global talent, and embedding this talent in the metropolitan challenges. So that's our program, Metropolitan Learning Lab, that we have discussed previously, that we are well, we're making agreements with universities in Barcelona and abroad. Next week, we will have a group of students from Princeton, another group from the University of Arizona. We have students from Newcastle, from different universities, and of course, local universities or universities like yours that is in Barcelona, to work with them on challenges, some of the challenges that we have been identifying for the metropolitan region, and that is a way that people coming from abroad that can be more submerged in our reality, and well, I think that fascinated by Barcelona and its challenges, and then this will fix some of this talent in our city, and of course contribute to facing these challenges. The third one is connecting the strategic knowledge and research, these alliances with international institutions that can provide us some knowledge that we hear, well, in the same sense that I said before, from local to global and from global to local in our major challenges like housing, like climate change, etc. The fourth one is placemaking, is contributing to regeneration, urban regeneration, and to make places more alive around them, not being fortresses in the middle of the city. So, and contribute in terms of mobility, in terms of environmental or energy policies, etc., contributing and being committed with the challenges that we have in this strategic plan or the policies. The fifth one is similar for the economy. So this is concept of the anchor institutions, like universities are institutions that are settled in this place, and it's difficult for them to change, to delocalize, and they are major consumers in the territory. So how they supply, so working with local suppliers, in canteens or for food, for any kind of supply. This is important to make them. So we always talk about public procurement, but there's the university procurement. I don't know is the correct way to say it, but the purchase power is important for the local economy, so how to make them be more connected with this. And the last one is, especially in this moment that we have the first generations of the immigrants that came 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So their offspring is now entering the university or with possibilities to enter the university, and we must avoid a new gap between these people that are already living here, but because they come from immigrant families, they have less opportunities to access and to be in the university. So how to integrate all of them in the university and in the society is very important. So these 6 areas, I think it's enough for the moment for the universities to access.
Thank you very much, Ariel.
Thank you.
It's great, and great to see that we can be the glue on some of those plans, and love that you call out the placemaking role that universities have. And maybe I'll ask a follow-on question to that to Margaret, but in the meantime, I invite the public to think about some questions and also invite those that are online. I understand they can ask questions via Zoom. So whilst you get your questions ready, maybe Margaret, if you can comment on that, because I think you've been also involved in some placemaking and district development as the urban university that RMIT is.
Yes, so RMIT is very cognizant of the fact that it is a significant real estate owner in the city of Melbourne, and particularly in the CBD. And COVID very much brought that to the fore when suddenly our buildings were empty, and the impact that had on the broader city. So we've been involved in multiple activities with the city of Melbourne and indeed the state of Victoria, ranging from what I mentioned with small and medium businesses, how do we help them regenerate, to trying to bring staff and students back on campus post-COVID, and taking that quite seriously in sort of pushing the messaging to staff who may be somewhat more reluctant, that we actually have a social responsibility to come back on campus to reactivate this city in any way that we can, to very, very large government initiatives with CBD North, so Central Business District North. We're acting as a key stakeholder in a significant investment in creating a social innovation and a social impact hub just to the north of Melbourne CBD. That's been a very long process. It's involved lots of co-design. It includes Activator, it includes the Innovation Hub for Health, it includes Innovation in Justice Hub, and also thinking about then how do we, that's great, we're all together, but how do we make things happen? How do we go from the concept of the CBD Hub to outcomes for businesses, outcomes for students, outcomes for employers, outcomes for citizens, and that's the stage we're at. We've also just been involved in another initiative, again with significant funding, with 60 industry partners, including investors and entrepreneurs, and multiple Melbourne-based universities, to transform Cremorne, which is sort of southwest, another area in the city, probably not very well activated at the moment, and turn that into a digital hub, and a global digital hub. And so from our own individual responsibility as employees of a university with such a footprint in the city, we have an individual responsibility as placemakers, right up to working with government on multi-billion city regeneration activities, and everything in between, from running Melbourne Knowledge Week to having place labs in different districts, which are almost like drop-in centres for innovation for citizens. So it's a really critical, when we think about the hats universities wear, they have a hat as a placemaker, as venture builders, as educators, and there are many, many hats that we wear. And I think when we think of it that way, we start to really see the scale and scope of what we can achieve.
That's great. Thank you very much, Margaret, for sharing that. And are there any questions from the room? We have time for a few questions. Yes?
Question from Margaret. I love what you said about reaching out from the grassroots level. I'm Usha, by the way, from Australia, Western Australia, yeah. And I'm a trainer and a coach for corporate trainings. But in my spare time, I'm very involved in a couple of not-for-profits.
Yes.
And I'd really like to find out how you see universities working with not-for-profits, because it is sometimes quite difficult for not-for-profits to reach to closing stuff. Do I have to repeat?
Translate.
No, okay. Yeah. I guess I just want to find out how you see not-for-profits working with universities and breaking down some of those barriers that we might have reaching out to you guys.
So thank you, and welcome, Western Australia. It's far. I hope you didn't fly in just yesterday. I like to, I like to use examples. So one of the ways that we, for example, work with a not-for-profit is in the context of trade routes. So this is a global growth program that we are working, was funded by government, but we work very closely with the Minderoo Foundation. You know them? Yeah. And so, yes, they have corporate backing, but they equally work as a not-for-profit. And we work with them in co-design. And that's one way that we have found a great common ground with not-for-profits. We also do some work, and just as activator, Marta, you may have other examples as well, with some charitable organizations. And what we do is we co-design activities with them. So we would take what we know in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship, some of the methodologies, and we will co-design a program with them. And in that way, we're actually transferring knowledge in a way that we don't necessarily have to charge for. And we can do that. But I think any entity that isn't an academic entity or a research entity in the first place struggles to interact with universities, because we have different language. And when I was an SME and when I started in this space, I was driven to this space because I needed to understand how can we help small and medium and Indigenous enterprises work with universities. How do we, because large corporates are very good at that. They know how to get the research grants, and they know how to get the information and how to do the IP deals. Outside of that, others struggle. And there are structural barriers in terms of just purely, how do I navigate a university? There's often no single door. I can't even begin to understand what's going on in there. Who's the right person to reach out to? So signposting and navigation is really critical. A shared language and shared objectives. So this goes back to collaboration in universities. Often it's collaboration to get what we individually want out of a collaboration. And I like to speak to what I think you were getting to, which is how do we have a collective mindset and not a zero-sum game? How do we raise the boat for all? And that's something that I think both parties have to learn. And it's about, technical word, absorptive capacity. So how do we raise the absorptive capacity of external entities in terms of speaking with and understanding what academics and scientists are telling us? But equally, how do we raise the absorptive capacity within universities to understand what industry and not-for-profits are saying to us about their deadlines, their objectives? And so I think there's a lot of work to be done to create that shared common language and set of objectives.
Can I invite Matteo to comment on that as well? Because you are a non-for-profit. and the question about how do you collaborate with universities? Because you also do a lot of data-driven work and policy.
We, as Uriol mentioned, and he's doing it the same way, we work in missions. So one of the challenges we have is that one of internationalization of the higher education in Barcelona. And how we work, I must say that it's not easy to work with public universities here, because they are huge, huge ones. And also their governance is very special. And they have huge problems in terms of funding, public funding, and in terms of, let's say, governance. And so when you try to, those are Titanic, so they're huge engines. So to try to help them move is very difficult. So what we do is we work in coalitions, bringing together public universities, private universities, specialized schools, informal, let's say, universities, which are with a growing importance in the ecosystems. And sometimes universities don't look at them, and they should look at them, what they are doing, and trying to be useful for them by having clear what is our role. And our role is to lobby in order to help the system to be internationalized, and to talk to the minister by saying, we are not a group of universities coming to see you, we are a group of civic leaders from different sectors, also universities, but big industry, small industry, entrepreneurs, creatives, museums, willing to make this happen. And so the minister, or the regional minister, has a surprise, because he receives someone who's not from his sector. And that in universities is quite unique, because it's quite an endogamic issue, at least in Spain. So we try to open those universities to the civic leadership. And that's important, I guess, for them. And for us, it's very important, because we need to create that culture of them being part of the society. Last issue about that, what we tell deans or principals in universities is that they are key people in town, key people. But sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they feel that they are not part of the civic leadership of the city. And they are, but they don't know that. And maybe the CEO of HP, he knows that he is a leader in town, and he acts as a leader in town. But the principal of a university, he acts as the leader of the university, but he doesn't act as a leader in town. And they should do that. And our role is to help them be leaders in town, because they are leaders in town, and we need their leadership. And we need them to really perform better the city. But it's not easy. It's not easy, at least in Barcelona.
Thank you very much.
I have
Wait,
a
microphone.
very quick note on this last point about internationalization. I'm Dana Abdrasheva. I represent UNESCO ESL, Institute for Higher Education in Latin America and Caribbean. And there is a very interesting point, I would even say example about internationalization coming from Hong Kong, where during the pandemic, they decided since we cannot really go outside, let's do the internationalization at home, which everyone was talking about. And what they did is having their students go and immerse into the cultural diversity within the city, which Barcelona also allows to do. In terms of, and they realized how much their majority or the majority of the students who represent the Cantonese-speaking students, they have not been completely familiar with what's happening even within, for example, a French community, mainland China community, or any of those communities. So that was already an internationalization experience for these students without stepping outside their own city. And how this also is helping to enrich these students, because they were not, and they were also, what they were doing is also going to explore the refugee, for example, communities, helping them. So volunteering plus learning some cultural aspects of that particular ethnic group. That's the first point. And the second point I was going to talk about, asking Margaret about the impact. Like when we think about the impact from the institutional perspective, how do we, me as a university, how do I first of all choose kind of, which particular field, or does it have to be a theme, or what? How can I choose the impact where I want to make in the future, and how often does this strategy for impact will need to change?
Okay, thank you. So that actually brings up something that I wanted to raise, which is how universities reward and promote people, because I think it's pretty fundamental to some of these questions. For example, how difficult it is for certain external organizations to work with us, because perhaps the academics are rewarded to work with, to bring in certain types of funds to work on certain types of projects, right? And so that also creates another structural barrier, and so I think that's important. I think there's a couple of pillars to this. I don't really believe in 5-year strategies. I'm sorry, I come from business. I know they get written and put in a drawer. So I'd like to think of it just as a living, breathing thing, in which case it's constantly changing and has to be constantly changing. And that goes back to how we need to rethink universities and being agile. And that's also, if we are driven from a bottom-up, outside-in approach in terms of how we think about creating impact in the community, it will change as often as those needs change. I think if we are thinking about it vertically, if we're thinking about it from a top down, we know what this community needs, and we're going to say this in 2022, and we're going to do this in 2023, 24, 25, and 26, we'll be caught off guard by the next pandemic. Okay, so for me, impact is a living, breathing thing. It is what we do every day, whether that's delivered through some really unique knowledge that we've created, through inspirational teaching, through creating and building ventures, through being placemakers. And there are all of these facets to it. So the moment we think that we know what impact is the moment we stop having it.
It would be great to hear your comments on that as well.
Yes, building on what Margaret was saying, I think that there are shortage of resources. There are many ways you can look at this. No, when I talked before about these cyber-physical age, is because there are demands that are not being met, and there is shortage of resources. There is aging population. There is situational things like the one we have lived in the last couple of years, right? So all of these should be things that inspire in which direction do you go, no? And then you can, and how do you address them? No? There are large ecosystems, as I said before, that can help you accelerate your ideas, turn your ideas into real solutions for real problems, right? So it's like, for me, it's like in any other business. Is this a problem? Is this a real problem? Has high priority? Would you put effort and money on it and go? But this requires, as I said before, you need to go out, you need to validate that this is the case, but the opportunity is there, no question.
And I would just say we need to find a way to measure impact, because that is one of the things for universities. They're not used to measuring impact yet, and there can be hard measures, but a lot of those measures are qualitative, and so rethinking how we build measures for impact into everything we do, and indeed into rankings as well, and not have it as a separate ranking. That's a whole other area of work.
No, thank you for that. And I think we have time for one more question. I've seen you patiently waiting. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much for this super interesting discussion. We've been discussing about this local societal change, but I must admit that I'm a bit surprised by the fact that none of you mentioned the role of students in that local societal change. So I'm here representing ESN, the Erasmus Student Network, and ESN here we believe that students are the best allies of universities when it comes to like agents on the ground, making that societal change real. For example, you mentioned, I don't know your name, sorry. The previous person who spoke mentioned going to local communities. For example, in ESN, we have one of our flagship initiatives, which is called Erasmus in Schools, where basically we take international students to primary and secondary schools, not just in the city of Barcelona, but also in rural areas where we promote international mobility, intercultural understanding, etc. So I would like to ask you, what is your point of view when it comes to the role of students? So should universities also strategize on how to transform their own students into agents of change?
It's a great question, Mateo. You want to?
So why do we want to internationalize our universities? Is because we want students from everywhere to come to Barcelona or to elsewhere. When you look at the list of students in certain universities in Barcelona and you see that the surnames of that list are mostly majority Spaniards surnames, this is very sad. Because the opportunity of mixing people, mixing cultures, mixing philosophies, ways of eating, religions, whatever, is an opportunity you can only have really once in a life, which is in university. And if we don't do that, we will be missing an opportunity as humankind.
Oriol?
This is the spirit of our Metropolitan Learning Lab. So we are taking all these people and making them work and understand what is happening in this city, because they are. This is the way to engage them more with the place we are in at this moment, and because they are providing us a lot of very interesting ideas, insights, and their points of view. And when you mix a team, someone coming from India, another one coming from Colombia, another one coming from Armenia, and they work together, and they all have this vision about one of the challenges that we pose them in this Metropolitan Learning Lab, so the experience is amazing. We always prepare presentations from them and then publish their results. Well, I think that this is a way to engage them and to be engaged with the talent that comes from abroad, because it's amazing how prepared are they and what ideas they bring us. Yeah.
Thanks, Oriol.
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing. You know, you hear on the news here in Spain, oh, we have a problem and the students need to go abroad. I'm looking at this, instead of negative, to an opportunity. You go abroad, you connect with other people, you are the representative of your education, which is very good in Spain. The formal education is excellent, no? And this is an opportunity to do more networking. No? This is one of the things I always promote. I had people working for me that told me, I'm going to go to another country to work. I said, great, great. Some of them came back. Some others, I have a great relationship. We have been partners. So anything that helps learn about other cultures, other ways of work, language is another big one here, and at least locally. All of this is very positive. Take it, and eventually some people will come back, some people will not, but this is something that I encourage all the students to have this experience.
Yeah, I'd love to comment, and I'll go back to when I started at the very beginning, the who are we doing this for, and who gives us a license to operate as a university, and it's the students, and let's not forget the parents as well, because they're really critical actually in this decision. So we believe in this, students as fundamental agents of change, and what we do about that is we have entities like Activator. So at Activator, we work every day to make sure that we are embedding innovation and entrepreneurship as platforms for change into traditional curriculum. It's a long and tough job at times, but we do believe that if we don't do that, and if we don't help those students acquire those durable and enduring skills, and not just the technical ones, but the human-centered ones, the social ones, they're not going to be effective agents of change. So we have to change their mindset. We work on building global and growth mindsets. We work on building an impact mindset. We work with them on helping them to understand sustainability. Everything we do in all of our industry challenges are all built on social impact challenges. And we do that into many, many, many different courses. Again, some of them are full semester long for credit. Others are 3-4 week design sprints, leveraging industry challenges, all in the social impact, social change space. And those students emerge, we would hope, having had an Activator experience, being closer to being really active agents of social change in the community in Melbourne, but also in Vietnam, in Singapore, in Barcelona, and wherever, as an international student, they go back to. That's a primary focus of everything we do.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the question. Great to have the voice of the student. I was an Erasmus myself. It took me 10 years to come back via Australia as well. Yeah, but thank you for that. And I mean, it's been a fantastic privilege to be running this panel, thinking that we have actors from an urban environment, university, corporate, private sector, and civic society having this dialogue about impact, because it's really that ecosystem that needs to come together to make things happen, and particularly if we're thinking about that major challenge that we have ahead to the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. So thank you very much for participating in this panel. Thank you to the audience for hanging on in there at the end of the day, and for all of you that are connecting online. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thanks.
Thank you.